Hello. I'm sure that in this time of lockdown, when you phone your friends, one of the questions you always ask is, so how have you been spending your time in the lockdown? Well, let me tell you how I started spending my time. I thought I would develop a new seminar. And the title was, How to Not Murder Your Wife After 3 Weeks of Lockdown.
How interesting is that? Because I have just started a book and it's entitled How to Not Murder Your Husband After 1 Week in Lockdown.
Well, then I just stopped doing my seminar, obviously.
Yeah, you might as well.
Well, it is a fact that lockdown definitely brings additional tension, additional irritations, additional frustrations. And in fact, we heard the other day that the domestic violence in France has increased by 46%. Now, I don't know what the figures are for South Africa, but it's a fact that there is a definite increase in domestic violence. And it would seem that when marriages are solid and good, this time together can actually enhance the relationship. While in other marriages, when things suddenly blow up, it's probably an indication that there have been a lot of things just simmering below the surface. So I would like to talk about how we can cope with these irritations, frustrations, conflict, and how do we deal with these things in a way that we can minimize the negative impact. And then Joy is going to talk about the positive things that couples and families can do during this time of lockdown just to enhance the relationship. Now, what do most of us do when our spouses irritate us? And I do irritate you, don't I?
Oh, yes. And I irritate you.
I was hoping you wouldn't say that, but anyway. Yes, it happens in all marriages, and the more so during this lockdown. What do we usually do? We point it out to our partners. We criticize them. The problem with criticism is that it is an attack. Whether that criticism is justified or not, it is always an attack. And you know, when people are attacked, they will defend. For sure. Instinctively, impulsively. And the trouble is that when you defend yourself, then you take a position that you can't back down from. And you know, it's very interesting to see how some people defend themselves. Some people will defend themselves by actually keeping quiet. And of course, that makes their spouse want to crawl up the walls with frustration. They say nothing and they walk away.
Because for them it works.
It works, yes. Other people make all kinds of excuses. You know, it wasn't me, or I've got too much to do, or if it wasn't for so-and-so, and they blame others, and they've all got an excuse for doing what they did, even to the point of saying, well, my grandfather had this bad temper, and I've inherited it from him. And of course, when you make excuses, it just escalates the conflict. It doesn't settle anything. And then some people counterattack. I mean, look what happens when your spouse criticizes you about something and you say, what about you the other day? Or you say something like, yes, now you know what it feels like when you do that to me. And of course, again, that doesn't resolve anything. It just escalates the conflict. And why do people counterattack? Because it works. Listen, guys, the next time your wife criticizes you for walking mud on a carpet, all you have to do is criticize her hairstyle. Guaranteed she'll forget all about the mud. Of course, it does nothing for the marriage relationship.
But our hair is very important to us.
You see, when you come with excuses, when you defend yourself, you end up in what is known as a win-lose situation. It's a win-lose trap. And because nobody wants to lose, nobody will change. I remember a couple coming to see me one day, and the big complaint from the wife is that he does not come home straight after work. He goes to the pub and he drinks a beer. Now, the more she nagged him about coming home on time, the later he came. Eventually, she said to him, listen, if you are not home by 7 o'clock, I'm going to give your food to the dog. Do you think he was home by 7 o'clock? Of course not. And the dog thought it was Christmas every day. But then when he and I spoke privately, he said a very interesting thing. He said, you know, I'd like to come home early. I'd like to be with my children. I don't want to sit in the pub every afternoon. And my reaction was, so pal, what's your problem? Come home early. Problem solved. No, I can't, he said. Why not? No, if I come home early, she's going to greet me with that smirk on her face. She has won and I have lost. And you know, it just made me realize that the very thing she wanted, she was actually preventing, because she took this attack defense, win-lose approach. Call it you versus me. Well, could she have handled it differently? Of course. She could have said something like, honey, I'd love you to come home early and just spend time with the kids. But I know that you enjoy visiting with your friends, and I understand that. But it would be nice if you came home early sometime. And if she left it at that, then he would be free to come home early and not have the feeling she's won and he's lost. Well, what can couples do to fight properly? And all couples fight. And I can reassure you that after 51 years of marriage, Joy and I still have differences of opinion.
Oh, yes.
We still have conflict. And so a good marriage is not where there's no conflict. A good marriage is when there is conflict, that one deals with it in a positive way. One of the things that she and I did just after we were married is that we made a commitment that every time we have a blow up, and believe me, they were there, we would actually take the time afterwards to discuss it and analyze, why did it happen? Why did it end up in an argument? And what can we do to prevent it in the future? Well, I think we were married, 2-3 years, when one evening, out of the blue, she criticized me about something I'd done wrong. And I, of course, immediately defended myself. And she reacted to that, and I to that, and she to that, and I to that. And
Phew.
do you remember that time?
Absolutely.
Well, when we had calmed down about 2 days later, we sat down. Why should it end up in an argument? Why can't she point out to me things that bother her? Surely she must have the right to do that. And you know what we realized? One of the problems was she had attacked me out of the blue. She had not prepared me. She had not warned me. She had not asked for permission. She had started shooting before she had declared war. And everybody knows that that is a violation of the Geneva Convention. And she and I came to a very interesting agreement that we've tried to stick to all these years. Can I emphasize tried? Mm-hmm. We haven't always got it right.
Yeah.
But we've tried. And the agreement is this. If I want to criticize my wife, or she wants to criticize me, point out something negative, we will actually prepare each other by asking for permission. And the key words in our home are,
may I share something with you? Only 6 little words, so easy.
And when Joy comes to me and says, Arnold, may I share something with you? I know I'm going to hear something negative, but it gives me a few moments to just say to myself, you're going to get criticized. Don't argue back. Don't defend yourself. Mm-hmm. Just listen. And then we also agreed to make use of an I message rather than a you message.
I felt very lonely. But before I felt lonely, I felt terrible the way you criticized me in front of the friends.
Okay, Joy was saying she felt very humiliated when I criticized her in front of her friends. Mm-hmm. That's actually an I message. But if she had said, you made a fool of me out of my friends, mm-hmm. that's a you message. And a you message is an attack. And an attack leads to defense. And I want to tell you, these rules, this agreement has prevented so many unnecessary fights in our home. For example, I had, and I want to emphasize past tense, I had this bad habit of eating rapidly and getting up from the table halfway through the meal. Now, no woman wants to be left sitting alone at the table with the children. And I understand that. But one evening I did it again. And I didn't do it deliberately. my mind is on something else. I've got work to do. So about half an hour later, she walked into my study and she said, "May I share something with you?" And I shifted my chair around and I said, "Yes, okay, I'll take this like a man." And her exact words were,
I felt very lonely finishing my meal all on my own with our kiddies while you get up and walk to your study.
that's all she said. She told me she felt lonely. What can I answer to that? All I could say was, "I'm sorry." And she said, "Fine." Settled. The message got through. The love relationship was not broken. But I can assure you that if she had walked in there and said, "Yes, you take the trouble I take the trouble to prepare all this food and you just gobble it up and you leave me sitting on my own," I know what I would have said. I would have said, "Woman, leave me alone. I do not have the time to sit and watch you chew your food."
Yoo-hoo!
And we would have had a major fight.
Absolutely.
And at least 2 weeks sanctions.
No, 3.
Oh, 3?
Yes.
Well, I'm so glad it didn't happen then. But you know, because she prepared me, she used an iMessage. To this day, I'm very aware of remaining seated at the table till everybody's finished eating. Now, it did happen on one occasion that I said to Joy, "May I share something with you?" And she said, "No."
Because I've had a very heavy day and I can't take any more.
Well, I must stick to the rules. So took out a piece of paper and I wrote it down. I mean, I don't want to forget it. And then the next day I took out the paper and I said, "May I share with you now?" And she said, "Yes."
I'm ready.
And so then I shared what was bothering me. And you see, by sticking to those rules, we learn to fight properly. Now, are you aware that all conflict, and it doesn't matter whether it's husband, wife, parent, teenager, boss, subordinate, political, international, all conflict is based on one assumption: I am right and you are wrong. I mean, how long are the Jews and the Arabs in Israel still going to have conflict? My guess is somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 years. Because if you listen to the Palestinians, they will tell you why they are right and the Israelis are wrong, and they have all the evidence to back it up. And you listen to the Israelis, and they will tell you why they are right and the Palestinians are wrong, and they have all the evidence to back it up. As long as the two parties take the view, I am right and you are wrong, the conflict can never be resolved, because it's a you against me situation. The answer: stand on the same side and tackle the problem, not one another. It's called us against the problem. And in fact, the first book I ever wrote on conflict handling had the title Us Against the Problem. And the person who taught this to me by default was my wife. Because one Friday evening we had this huge argument and we did not resolve it before going to bed. And the following morning, the atmosphere at home was, I can best describe it as formally polite. Do you know about that atmosphere? You sit at the breakfast table and you say, "Son, please ask your mother to pass me the butter." And when you do talk to each other, you talk to each other in telegram style.
Are you going to town?
Yes.
We need bread.
Okay, I'll buy some. And you just say enough just to keep the household running. Well, we had an atmosphere like that. But by 11 o'clock that morning, Joy said to me, "We cannot go on like this. Let's go to your study, let's write down our different viewpoints, and let's see if we cannot resolve them." Now, at the time that she suggested that, neither of us realized what a wonderful approach it was. Because let's think about it. She did not rehash the argument to try and prove she was right and I was wrong. But neither did she pretend that it was forgotten. Because those things do not get forgotten. They go onto the account. And there are couples with long outstanding accounts of unresolved conflicts. And every now and then they send each other an invoice or two. But she took the approach, let's write down the differences of opinion, let's see if we cannot resolve it. And of course, from my side, it did require a willingness to do that. I could have said, "No, I don't want to," and then I don't know what she could have done. But I said, "All right, let's go."
And I was so relieved that you were willing to do that. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened.
Did you know that an argument on paper sounds totally different to that same argument verbally? Because there are no emotions on paper. And when I started reading what she was writing, I said, "Joy, are you writing down my viewpoint first?" She said, "No, it's my viewpoint." I said, "It's mine too." And we discovered the biggest fight we've ever had in all our years was based on a misunderstanding, as so many fights are.
Absolutely.
Not all, but many are. Now, to get on the same side requires a very important precondition, as it were. And that is that both parties have to agree that the other one is right. It's not a case of switching from I'm right, you're wrong to you're right, I'm wrong, but that we are both right. Let me give you an example. I mean, guys, you won't believe this, but my wife calls me for supper. Do you know what? She wants me to come immediately. I mean, how can I come immediately? I'm busy, I'm thinking, I'm writing, I'm on the internet. I can't just switch off.
Yeah, but I want my food warm when I serve it. I don't want it cold.
Yeah, so by the time I get to the supper table, she's in a mood and the whole evening is spoilt. But we got to the point where she said, all right, I understand that you need time to wind up. And I said to her, and I understand that you do not want to serve food cold.
Absolutely.
In other words, we were acknowledging that both are right. And once you acknowledge that, comes the magic question, so how are we going to solve this problem? Or what are we going to do to prevent it causing friction? And the solutions, and I've seen that over and over again, are often so very, very simple. We simply agreed that after she called me, I have 5 minutes grace. And I've usually in time, and we haven't fought about that for years.
And if it is late, then I just start eating on my own. Not a problem.
And that's fair.
But it hasn't happened.
It
for a long
hasn't.
time.
Oh, of course not anymore. As many of our conflicts that we've resolved in this way. But there's another aspect that's vital in dealing with conflict constructively, and that is to forgive one another. And Joy and I have years ago agreed that when the one says something that hurts the other one or does something that upsets the other one, that it was never done deliberately. And you know, when we understand that our spouse does not upset us deliberately, it is so much easier to forgive, to just overlook it.
Can I say at this stage, Arnold, that a happy marriage is two forgivers? And that's what I believe.
And I'm reminded of 1 Peter 2:23, where it said that Jesus did not retaliate when he was insulted, nor threaten revenge when he suffered. Now, this lockdown time is also a wonderful opportunity of building the marriage and the family relationship by doing a whole lot of things together. And Joy, it's over to you.
Right. So many people have said, Joy, I'm so bored and I don't know what to do. And I'm thinking it's a wonderful time to be creative and just to involve the family. And I think it's so special. And I would love to say, let every spouse at least set 20 minutes aside just for time together. Just, honey, how are you feeling? How is the lockdown affecting you? Are you worried about the future? And we can share like this and we can remind one another of scriptures.
We've just started during the lockdown to have tea time together at 4 o'clock every afternoon.
And when it's 4:45, I get so excited to say, Arnold, 50 more minutes and then it's coffee time for me.
And we've really started looking forward to that, just those 20 minutes, just sitting down, cell phone switched off, and just sharing things with each other.
And then secondly, family devotions. So often in the past, when we want family devotions, oh, this one's going to his girlfriend and that one's got to practice or whatever. Now we are locked down. We are all together. And how wonderful to get around God's word after supper and to read his word, sing some wonderful praise songs that we love, pray for one another. How can I pray for you? And so you can go around the family circle and spend that time together. It's precious. Did you want to share what we used to do when we were young?
Yes, even with our kids were small, we used to act out stories. I remember the time we had this huge tractor tube and the children sat in it and they rocked it, and this was Jesus in the boat and the storm, and then suddenly Jesus would say, "Peace be still," and the children would sit dead still, you know. And we had such fun having family prayers like that. Of course, family devotions depends on the age of your children. And when they were teenagers, they actually led some of the Bible studies. When they were small kids, we just had lots of actions and play acting.
And we were amazed at what they taught us. And then hold family councils. We used to have gripe sessions around the table, and we gather the family around and we say, right, let's share what is affecting you or aggravating you about someone. And if you are one of the persons that has been addressed, don't argue, just listen. And then when it comes to your time to gripe about someone, you can air your feelings. And that's very healthy, because sometimes in this lockdown, there's a bit of bitterness or a bit of friction, and it's causing an atmosphere which is not lekker. And so to be able to sort it out is so good. Just say, may I share this with you? And then it comes across softly.
And the children were allowed to gripe about the parents.
Oh yes.
Like sometimes we promised them things that we'd forgotten, and they would gripe about it. And the fact that we listened to them and apologized to them gave them the feeling that their views, their feelings were also important and also respected.
And then I'm going to deal with family activities. And we're going to touch on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So starting with Monday, memories. And we've suggested the kids may bring their cell phones to that event, because they've got to show us a picture of either a happy memory, a sad memory, or a precious memory. And then they pass the picture around, and then they share deep.
And they don't always have to bring a photo. They can just share an experience.
Although it's nice to see. I like to see. So that's special. And then for tea, truths on Tuesday. Discuss truths. Great truths. Maybe from the Bible or from something that you have heard of recently. Well, I just shared, I was on Facebook, and I learned that during the Black Plague, Isaac Newton discovered the law of gravity. And I suddenly thought, how many of our children might discover something? Or one of us. Let's be creative and let's share these truths with one another and see what could happen. I'm thinking of one of our grandchildren who's busy composing songs. And wonderful. Then we move to Wednesday, W for wacky. A wacky evening. What about a blindfolded evening where everyone goes to the supper table blindfolded and only one person hasn't got the blindfold? So they can lead them to their chairs, sit them down, and they may serve the meals. I suggest, Mom, a plastic tablecloth, because there might be spills or messes. Not that we would do it on purpose, but it can happen. I think it's a wonderful idea, and also to discover, how do blind people handle this sort of thing? So you can have all sorts of wonderful ideas, and let the children give you ideas for your wacky evening. Then Thursday for tea, tasty dinner. Wow. Each one can have a turn of making a meal. For the littlies, they can even do fried eggs and bacon, and macaroni and cheese, or spaghetti bolognese, or maybe a sit-down dinner with lamb. And everybody's got to come dressed up to the nines. And with aftershave, perfume, they sit down at the table that has been beautifully set with Mom's crystal and china and what have you. And there's one guy who wears the serviette over his arm, and he serves. It could be a fabulous evening, and then ending up dancing together afterwards.
Ooh.
Wow. So yes, one can have such fun. And I just love seeing everybody dressed up. The girls so prettily dressed up, their hair done, the boys looking so handsome in their whatevers. And then we come to Friday, F, a fun night. The children can also tell you what they would like to do. And I've just listed a few things here. What about making a video? I remember when the kids were younger, Arnold and I were in bed and the burglar came, and all the fun and rushing around that had happened during that video.
And the children wrote the script.
Yes, that was such fun. What about family bingo? Or acting out a play together? Or even having a concert and let everyone take part, musical instruments, singing, jokes, whatever, telling a story.
And there was a time that we wrote a family newspaper where people posted news items from each member of the family.
So that was fun. But Dad, What about taking the family on a game drive? Now, you probably can only do this with the littlies. Take them on a game drive, and you are the game ranger, and you are going to tell them what you see. And they can also tell you. Make sure that they all have a hat, binoculars, and a camera hanging around their necks. And then you go on this game drive together, and everyone says, "Oh, Dad, there's a leopard." And then just sit still and say, "What can you tell me about a leopard? Can I share something about a leopard?" Or elephants. They are fascinating animals. And so you can make your evening full of fun. And then the last thing I suggest was games. You know what happens when someone is very sad? Maybe you're missing your friends, especially when there's a boyfriend, girlfriend, and you're very down. I cannot tell you how games change the atmosphere. They change you. You suddenly come alive and you discover one another and you laugh and you joke and you play these games. I'm thinking of games for the littlies like snakes and ladders. And then as the kids get older, Scrabble, 30 seconds, Why You Know Me, or even Rummikub. There's so many games on the market. Play them and just watch the family coming alive, and you learn so much from someone. When we did Why You Know Me, the husband didn't even know what color his wife's toothbrush was, and you learn silly little things like that, but you have a giggle. And so board games, very, very special. What about playing cards? Littlies love Snap. I still like Snap, as old as I am, but then you get things like Rummy, Canasta. And what do our children love playing with us?
Oh, shucks.
Oh, shucks. When they come and visit us, they say, "Dad and Mom, how about a game of oh, shucks before we go home?" So cards are wonderful. And then build a jigsaw puzzle. We've already built 5, and we've knocked them all down, and we're starting over again. It's such fun because every day you add a few pieces, and sometimes you just sit there and you just have fun with one another watching. I love to watch the shape of the puzzles because then I find a shape that fits in there and I feel so good. Arnold, I think that's fine.
Yeah, and I think what's important at this time is that you limit screen time to the absolute minimum. The family members, husband, wife, children, may not retreat behind their cell phones, their tablets, watching TV. Put an absolute limited specific time, no more than 1 hour, maybe at the most 2 hours a day, because when everybody goes onto their screens, it actually just reduces the family relationships. It actually harms it. So I think it's vital that we do that.
And then household chores.
Oh, no.
I want to be with moms on this one because we don't want to do everything because then we lose out on the fun and we can't do what we would like. So moms, I've got a good suggestion. I suggest that you write down all the chores that need to be done each day and then allow each member of the family...
What kind of chores?
Oh, but I just want to say allow each member of the family to be a housekeeping manager. Now, the type of chores are washing dishes, raking up leaves, cleaning the house,
Taking out the dirt bin.
Whatever the case might be, and Mom's got her all organized. And then she delegates to the first child, and says, "Right, today's your day, delegate. And if you get something you don't like doing, don't moan, because when it's your turn, you get to do the nice thing, and you give them the not so nice part."
So what you're saying is that each day, one member of the family has the right to tell all the others what to do.
Absolutely.
And they have to obey.
Without arguing or saying, "Oh, gee."
Well, just in closing, I think that this lockdown can also cause a great deal of anxiety, particularly about the future. And I think of people who are faced with the fact that they're losing their income. They're not sure if they're going to still have a job. Certainly people like myself, consultants, we have no work whatsoever, no income.
Especially the hospitals, Arnold. You know, are any of our staff going to pick up this coronavirus, and what's going to happen?
This is the time to turn to the Word of God. And I want to leave you with one scripture, and it's Hebrews 13, verse 5 and 6. God has said, "I will never fail you. I will never abandon you." So we can say with confidence, "The Lord is my helper, so I will have no fear."
And for the little children, you can teach them, I will never leave you. And just let them repeat it, and it becomes so special to them.
Yes, or take the scripture and write it out and stick it on a mirror or a place where you see it often. And as you read it, just ask yourself this question: is this true, or was God telling a lie? And this is really the test of faith. Well, our prayer is that you'll experience the Lord's richest blessing and His wonderful presence in this difficult time.
And have fun with this precious family that God has given to you.